Is it on? Oh, yeah, it is. So the top of the morning to you. I can say that I'm Irish. There are folks here that I don't know myself, and there may be some people here you don't know. So let's just take a minute, stand up, and go to somebody you don't know and say hello to them. Be fearless. I know you, but good to see you. Enough of this frivolity. Welcome. My name is Lama Tom Broadwater. I'm very happy to be here this morning. I was telling somebody, some days you wake up and there's just no obstacles to you getting done what you need to do, and the day's beautiful and everything just, it doesn't happen often. We live in samsara, right, where there's all kinds of suffering. But today was one of those days everything seemed to go right. Now, having said that, everything may go to hell later on, but for right now, I'm really happy. So I hope your day is going well, too. So, I need a sheet there. Do we have the 4 immeasurables on here? No. So, could I have a red book back there also? And what I will do is I want to say the 4 immeasurables, but I'll just say them myself. I won't have them pass out all the books. That gets a little complicated. Thank you, Julian. It's in there? Yep. All right. Thank you. So to begin, we'll sort of set our mood. It's really important when we do anything related to Dharma to have a good attitude. And a Kempo in Scotland has this really wonderful way of describing what that attitude should be. And he said, when you come into a shrine room, have an open heart. Open and happy. Open to all that you might hear. Happy because you're here. And most important of all, loving. Have a loving heart. So that's the kind of thing we want to cultivate when we sit down and when we want to involve ourselves in any dharmic activity. And we'll begin by setting our motivation and intention by reciting the refuge and bodhicitta. And that's on this sheet. We'll say it in English. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. There's also another prayer or aspiration we can say, and although, is it too close? There we go. Okay. Thank you. What would we do without him? My gosh. So there's another prayer we can say, and although you don't have it, I'll say it, and you can just sort of listen to it. It's called the Four Immeasurables. May all beings gain happiness and the cause of happiness. So this is our aspiration. This is what we're wishing for. May all sentient beings gain happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be cut off from the highest bliss, which is devoid of suffering. May they come to rest in the great impartiality, which is free from attachment and aversion. That's a prayer often said at the beginning of any Dharma activity. And the reason we do that, among other reasons we do that, is we often come with certain resentments, certain conflicts, quarrels with other beings. And that inhibits our ability to listen well. So again, one of the things we want to have when we listen to Dharma is a mind and heart free from resentment. That prayer reminds us of that. So I just finished reciting the Four Immeasurables. You and I often find ourselves living in a very claustrophobic world of resentment. Just look around us. Filled with fear and small-mindedness. And we lament, along with T.S. Eliot's poor Alfred Prufrock, I have measured my life in coffee spoons. You know, I've measured my life out in little resentments, not making a big effort. The Four Immeasurables set our lives into a different direction. The Four Immeasurables are boundless, all-encompassing, and non-discriminatory. They nurture our open heart. They develop good karma. They remove obstacles and purify negativity. Now, I want you all to rush out today and get the Four Immeasurables and recite them frequently, because they do all that sort of thing. Implicit in the Four Immeasurables is the idea that we are working to let go of our ego fixation and remove the habits of grasping that involve that fixation. Our meditation masters often refer to that letting go as renunciation. So when we walk in the direction of the Four Immeasurables, the mind lets go and we are released from the grip of ego, of our small-mindedness. And we're walking towards the qualities of enlightenment. Becoming enlightened is a process of discovering ourselves. Each practice we do can offer us a glimpse of our true nature. So when we say the four immeasurables, we're glimpsing at that heart that is not bound by resentment. With that sort of awareness, any practice we do that's dharmic, any practice is profound. Each practice that we do means we get greater access to that truer nature. For example, we do a practice called Chenrezig, where we imagine ourselves as enlightened beings, as Chenrezig, the meditational deity of compassion. And we get a glimpse of what it might be like to have that kind of compassion. But here's the deal. If the four immeasurables point us in the right direction, bodhicitta takes us one step further along the way. And today's talk is about bodhicitta. What's bodhicitta? Well, in Sanskrit, it's the term that means, it's translated as mind of awakening. The word refers to the mind of an awakened being, or an awakening being, a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is the Mahayana hero or heroines who pursue Buddhahood in order to benefit other beings. Often you will see bodhicitta described in two ways: the relative or conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta, we haven't realized that yet, okay? We're not there yet. Ultimate bodhicitta is actualized when the true nature of our minds are fully discovered by us, when we become Buddhas. So that's ultimate bodhicitta. I'm going to first talk about relative bodhicitta, or conventional bodhicitta. And that, so it's like, this is the way Tibetans do it. It's two of this, down to this, down to this. So anyway, relative bodhicitta is broken down further in terms of aspirational bodhicitta. So awakening mind that aspires to awaken, and application bodhicitta. So we have ultimate and relative, and under relative, we have aspirational and application. Aspiration is when we took the refuge vow. If you noticed, we said, by this merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. That part is the bodhicitta part of the refuge vow and bodhicitta. So that's the second part of it. Each time we say the refuge vow, we are expressing an aspiration, a beautiful aspiration. So you could say that aspiration bodhicitta is a further extension of the four immeasurables. In the four immeasurables, our motivation has expanded to all beings, right? But bodhicitta is more explicit in wishing for the ultimate end to be the Buddhahood of all beings. So it's more expansive. And so in that respect, in that light, we could say the four immeasurables, however profound and beautiful they are still somewhat a bit limiting. Here's the deal. Without enlightenment, you and I remain obscured and deluded, stuck in what is called this endless cycle of suffering called samsara. In the aspirational aspect of bodhicitta, we aspire that all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness by becoming completely enlightened. Aspirational bodhicitta expresses our sublime goal of Buddhahood for all beings. And of course, we are included in that too. All beings, we're one of them, so we're including ourselves. We're not excluding ourselves. Buddhahood begins in a sublime aspiration based upon renunciation of our small claustrophobic life and world. While renunciation and aspiration are necessary steps, they aren't sufficient. We have to actually do something. And this is where application bodhicitta, if we want to have the heart and mind of an awakening being, we not only have to aspire, but we have to do something. And that's called application bodhicitta. So our hearts and minds have to be applied in doing something. It's more. So bodhicitta is more than just wishing. In application bodhicitta, we're going to actively be engaged. Our intentions move us to transformative action, transformative practice. So you can say that we begin with the knowledge that all beings want to be happy. There's no one that I know of, and I don't think anybody that you know of, that doesn't want to be happy, right? And we begin with that understanding. And by tenderizing our hearts, we are open to this universal desire. Happiness and Buddhahood is the result we all want. And that's aspiration. Application bodhicitta is about how we're going to get there. What are the practical relative steps we can take towards our enlightenment, to our Buddha nature? Application bodhicitta is found in what are called the 6 paramitas. That's another Sanskrit word, and it means perfections. So the 6 perfections, the 6 virtues, the 6 modes of action that will result in our going towards our own enlightenment. And our own enlightenment means to be able to see the inherent good nature that is within us, our Buddha nature. There are 6 categories that will take us beyond this cycle of suffering we call samsara. Samsara is a Sanskrit word, and it means aimless wandering through. I don't know about you, but for so much of my life, it has been aimless wandering. You know, I go this way, I go that way. I don't know about you, but before I came here, I've been a Catholic, I've been a, you name it, I've done one something or another. But it's funny, coming here, I felt at home. And the whole thing of wandering ceased to be a problem for me. But samsara is about wandering. And the 6 virtues that we're going to talk a little bit about today, not much, but we're going to talk a little bit about them. They are the behavior that points us direction in a directional way. We're no longer wandering. We have a direction, which is to find and discover this Buddha nature that's within us. We have a direction, and through the exercise of these virtues, we're going to take steps in that direction. Our lives having practiced these virtues is intentional. It has intent. We're no longer wandering about. They provide a direction. And because of that, as Buddhists, these 6 paramitas should pervade our daily life. It's the way we should operate daily. And it is said that through the exercise of these perfections, our life can go from confusion to clarity. The paramitas provide a stable basis for the development of clarity of our mind. We could talk a lot about the 6 paramitas, and I'm sure that you've heard talks about them before, and I'm sure you will hear talks about them in the future. I'm just going to briefly mention them and give you some idea of what they're all about. So most people have them memorized. I have them written in front of me, so. The first one is generosity. The next is morality. It's also called discipline. Patience. So these are behaviors that if we cultivate in our daily life, lead us to our open, beautiful Buddha nature. Generosity, morality, patience, vigor. It's also called diligence, meditation, which is also called concentration, and finally, wisdom. There are many excellent discussions about the 6 paramitas. Tai Situ, if you go on the YouTube, I use that a lot. I listen to a lot of YouTube Dharma talks while I'm on the treadmill. it's one way to do it. But anyway, Tai Situ has some really good talks on the 6 paramitas. So let's take generosity first. I mean, if you hear the word generosity, I think you all have some idea of what that must mean. It means giving, right? But it's not just giving money or giving time. It's not just, you could volunteer for hospice, you could volunteer in an animal shelter, you could volunteer here. But there are other ways, simple, easy ways to be generous. I don't know about you, but in my house right now, I have a lot of stink bugs. You get those all. Just picking them up, getting them, and taking them outside is an act of protection. You're being kind. You're offering protection. That's a form of generosity. Perhaps the best way to be generous is giving yourself, your presence to another person. Just being present to them. Just showing up. I'm sure you've been in places where there's like tension and so forth, and someone shows up who has a really steady mind, and they just change the whole atmosphere of the room. They're giving their steadiness, their presence of mind for the benefit of other beings. That's being generous also. The next paramita is morality. And here it's really about following some very simple rules. Don't cause suffering. Foster happiness. Help others. It's that simple. Sometimes we can't always be helpful, but we can avoid causing other people suffering. And most of the time, we recognize when we're doing that. When we are exercising morality, our demeanor and our attitude's really important. A bodhisattva, someone who is striving to become enlightened, who wants to have an open, loving, kind heart, doesn't express their morality in some sort of heavy-handed piety, a joyless restraint, or a stiff upper lip. Quite the opposite. The aspiring bodhisattva does all that he does or she does with a lightness, a lightheartedness. I'll give you an example. Lama Kathy. She is probably one of the busiest lamas in North America. And she has obstacles all the time. But there's a lightheartedness about her. And that's important. Sort of an airiness about her. You apply some humor to a situation, wherever that's appropriate. That's being moral. Next, patience. Let's relate that to our practice. We can show patience in our practice when we feel like we're not making any progress. You know, you come, you meditate, and you go home, and the same problems and the same responses you give. You don't think you're making any progress. Sometimes, quite honestly, we may sit here in the shrine room meditating and be bored out of our minds. It happens. And sometimes we sit on that cushion and we are so restless. We're waiting for the next moment. When's the bell going to? We have those, let's be honest, these things happen. And sometimes because of this restlessness or this boredom, we feel sort of hopeless. You know, I've been here, I've been coming, and I still have this restlessness. So to cut through all of that, restlessness, to cut through all of that boredom, be patient. Be patient with yourself. Steady as we go needs to be our motto. Progress, we have to look at progress not from last week or even last month necessarily, or in my case, in the last 20 years. It comes slowly. Progress comes, but it comes slowly. I say that, and there are exceptions. Some people tell me that they feel enormous progress initially, which is wonderful also. But for many of us, progress is slow. Patience. Let's apply diligence to our practice. We need diligence or vigor to get beyond discouragement. Mingyur Rinpoche said, a raincoat protects us against the rain, just like diligence protects us from giving up on ourselves. I was in retreat one time, and I was getting pretty discouraged. And I remember Lama Karma, who came here a couple weeks ago. He came into my room and saw how joyless I was and he said, apply yourself a little harder, don't give up so easily. He said, be more joyful. Recognize what you are trying to accomplish, which is, we're trying to accomplish an open, loving, kind heart. And that got me beyond my discouragement. So sometimes just putting ourselves a little more out, being a little bit more diligent, gets us beyond the rough spots. So like Mingyur Rinpoche says, a raincoat protects us against rain just like diligence protects us from giving up. Next, we'll talk about meditation. That is the fifth paramita. The benefits of meditation are innumerable, even for a beginner. But as a result of working with meditation, we develop an unwavering awareness regardless of what comes about. Now, it's not something that develops overnight. But what you will find, I guarantee you, if you meditate long enough, there will come a point where you develop a certain equanimity about things. It doesn't matter whether something bad is happening or something good is happening. You have this awareness that can take it in. Equanimity. A mindfulness, an awareness. And this mindfulness and awareness that we develop in meditation, we use in every practice we do in the Dharma. It's, for example, if we're doing chin raising, we need a certain amount of mindfulness, a certain amount of awareness to maintain our attention on what we are doing. Now finally we come to wisdom, and this is a tough one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain it very well. I'll do my best. But wisdom is the most important of all the virtues. Wisdom comes from hearing and studying the Dharma. It comes from reflecting on what we've learned in the Dharma, in Dharma talks from teachers. It comes from studying. And it comes from direct experience we gain through meditation. Wisdom comes through our meditating. Because here's what we do. We take what we hear, we develop a view of, as a result of what we hear. And through meditation, we make what we know as the view an experience in our own lives. That's what meditation is. We also gain wisdom, obviously, from teachers, not someone like myself, but like Lama Karma or Lama Kathy, great teachers. You learn from them. You learn wisdom. And through all of the above ways, we gain the wisdom that recognizes, this is the tough part, that recognizes the empty nature of all phenomena. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's in this way that wisdom allows us to apply all the other 5 virtues without egocentric fixation or elevated hopes and rewards and for personal results. So in each one of those virtues that I have described, we have to apply some wisdom. And in this case, wisdom means recognizing the empty nature, our own empty nature. Sorry about that. Our own empty nature. We're not there yet, but at some point when we have a stability within our meditation, we can come to the point that we just rest in the nature of our mind, just rest. And the next step is having sort of grabbed hold of our mind, we then look at it. And when we look at it, there's nothing to see. It's empty. I mean, they ask you the question, what color is your mind? Think about that. What shape is your mind? What size is your mind? It's empty. It has no shape, no size, no color. At some point, we'll be able to more recognize and understand that. While it is empty, at the same time, daggone it appears. So it is both empty and it's appear. And that's what happens when we develop wisdom. We recognize the empty nature of everything. But we also recognize things appear. And that's sort of the culmination of our Dharma practice, when we can actually discover this empty nature that is not empty in the sense of, empty is a strange word. Lama Kathy likes to use the word limitless instead of empty, that our mind is limitless. It's empty, limitless nature. So those are the 6 paramitas. So far, I've talked and tried to focus on relative or conventional bodhicitta. Now let's take a look at what's called absolute bodhicitta. But before we do that, let's make sure we know why we call relative or conventional bodhicitta relative or conventional. After all, we don't say that our aspiration is boundless. Let me say that again. We do say our aspiration is limitless and boundless, and that's true. But even though it is the most beneficial and altruistic motivation possible, it still functions within the realm of concepts, right? However much we work towards being selfless and beyond ego fixation, however much we work at that, we're always saying, I bow, I prostrate, I give my time, I give my treasure, I love unconditionally. So there's still this residual sense of self, right? Are you following me? So in all of our practices, we're still fixated on this self, even with our limitless aspiration. We're still stuck a bit in this residual sense of self. We still are stuck in this unenlightened dualistic reality. This is where ultimate bodhicitta comes in. When we speak of absolute or ultimate bodhicitta, we are pointing to a completely enlightened mind beyond concepts and dualism. We're not there. We're not there. But we can see that. We can imagine that. An awakened mind, awakened heart, beyond concepts. So in this way, bodhicitta is another way to express Buddhahood. And this is the ultimate bodhicitta. The awakened mind and heart. A mind that has recognized truly the empty but boundless sky-like nature of reality. How do we do that? We can have concordant experiences of that boundless sky-like nature of reality. We all have them. You see a beautiful sunset, and it's like beyond words. We just have this warm feeling. And that is an experience concordant with this Buddha nature. And don't think of it as something fake, not real. It's concordant with reality. We're not there yet, that's for sure, but we can have glimpses of what this true nature is by the experiences we have, whatever they may be. You and I have yet to develop a full understanding of what emptiness means. But we can apply that understanding, whatever it may be, to all of our practices. Don't take ourselves so seriously. Be light about it. There's a practice called Tonglen. Has people heard of this practice called Tonglen? I'm seeing heads nod, okay. So it's basically where you take in the suffering of other beings on the breath. As you breathe in, you think of suffering beings, and you think that by inhaling, you are taking that into your heart. By the way, that's a boundless, limitless heart. You take that in, and you exhale whatever kindness, love, compassion, loving kindness that other individual needs to heal. It's a practice. And there are some people that have said to me, now not only am I unhappy, I'm taking in everybody else's unhappiness. Gosh, that's really a bummer. And some people say, Tonglen, what's so great about that? And you might say, going one step further, if the Buddha's compassion is limitless, a Buddha must be the unhappiest person in the universe, right? Because they're compassionate with all beings. So this is sounding really depressing. So to explain how compassion and emptiness become unified, I'm going to quote from Mingyur Rinpoche's book from here on, because he's pretty much of an enlightened being. And what he says can help us understand how you can take in suffering and not yourself feel unhappy. He says, and I quote, "It is because of emptiness that the Buddha's compassion is immeasurable. It is precisely our concepts of compassion that limit our capacities. Limitless compassion can only arise in the absence of concepts." If we continue in meditation, we will see that emptiness is inseparable from compassion. From the ultimate point, and I'm continuing to quote from him, from the ultimate point of view, suffering, confusion, and all of samsara are concepts. Yet we know there are literally billions of people who are suffering, and suffering greatly. We only have to look at the news. We can get stuck in believing in the inevitability of it all. He says, we are ignorant, and sometimes militantly so, of the ways we create suffering for ourselves and others. The mind of an awakened bodhisattva has an intelligent heart and responds with compassion, while at the same time they possess the wisdom that recognizes the true emptiness of the situation. You and I don't have to get entangled into the storyline that people use to explain their unhappiness. We actually may perceive the delusions that make their confusion appear fixed and unchanging. We may also see the insubstantial nature of the situation, but we still see people trapped in destructive habits, and we still see people's inability to step away from their own confusion. And we have compassion. Let's take a couple steps back from that. Let's look at it another way. Let's look at our good deeds. If you continue to think conceptually in qualifiable terms, in terms of personal ego, the work of an aspiring bodhisattva quickly becomes overwhelming. I look at Lama Kathy and I look at all the work she does, and I'm not on the level of the bodhisattva she is. I would become overwhelmed by all the work she does. But she has this happy nature about her. So she's an example for us of how, and she is able to see the empty nature of it all and does her work. So once we begin to bring into our lives the emptiness, once we do that, things sort of lighten up a bit. Experiences that once seemed to be real and substantial become dreamlike. John M. Cantrell the Great says one of the great exercises we can do to work with this idea of emptiness is just stop and pause once in a while, particularly in difficult situations, and just recognize this is sort of like a dream. Right now, this very moment, it's like a dream. We all came together, we're here. 20 minutes from now, we're all dispersed. It's gone. There is nothing substantial, real about this meeting that we're having right now. It comes, it goes, where'd it go? It's empty. So pausing once in a while, just doing that, helps us gain a greater understanding of what emptiness is all about. Again, I'm going to quote Mingyur Rinpoche. And he says, if we see someone suffering in a dream, we can spontaneously do something to help alleviate their suffering, but without getting caught up in the drama, without taking our actions or themselves too seriously. Mingyur Rinpoche ended his book, this section of the book, by telling a story. And it's a story about a student and his Buddhist master. And the student asked his Buddhist master, he said, "Master, do you realize people suffer?" And the Buddhist master said, "Yes." He said, "Recently my wife died, and I cried and I cried. But my tears had no root." Once we can take hold of this emptiness, when it is recognized, suffering cannot take hold. It does not arise from habit or neurotic behavior, nor perpetuate itself by attachment to that suffering or patterns of self-pity. Perhaps we don't have I know I don't, have a full understanding of emptiness. But the work of the Bodhisattva, the person who is striving towards an awakened heart, it requires us to have some recognition of the empty nature of things, even if it means a leap of faith. That recognition leads us out of suffering and to liberation. I have a book that I've been reading for the past 5 years. The reason is it's big. But in it, there is a beautiful passage about the union of emptiness and compassion. And I want to read it to you. It's a passage from Nagarjuna. And it says, if you and others in this world wish to attain unsurpassable awakening, you need bodhicitta. Its root, firm as the mighty king of mountains, compassion stretching throughout all directions, and wisdom, not duality. Furthermore, and this is the good part, passage I love. While the radiance of your affection that cannot bear the suffering of other beings is unceasing. Let me read that again. While the radiance of your affection that cannot bear the suffering of other beings is unceasing, you are aware that its essence or its nature is empty. It does not exist as anything at all. That is said to be the unification of emptiness and compassion, or bodhicitta, that is emptiness imbued with the heart of compassion. So that's what I wish for all of us. I really do. I wish that in the world, you and I can manifest the radiance of our love and our unbearable compassion for suffering beings, and do whatever we can and that is appropriate to help those suffering beings, while at the same time, and perhaps because we recognize the empty nature of it all. So let's just take a moment and relax and just settle. So we have a little time for questions, comments, thoughts, and there's the microphone. And there's the microphone too.
Good morning. Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about the mind, watching the mind?
I didn't hear you.
Can you talk a little more about the mind, looking at the mind? I don't quite get that.
The mind?
The mind, looking at the mind.
Yeah, that is a contradiction, isn't it? Because how can the mind look at the mind? I mean, it's like, can the eyeball look at the eyeball? Right? But here's the deal. The mind is not a thing. If it were a thing, it couldn't look at itself. But it's not a thing. That's one explanation. And if you don't like that one, there's another way of looking at it. The second way would be there is an aspect of the mind that can look at the mind. That observer can look at the mind. So there's two ways of looking at it. Does that help at all? No. The point is that to be able to look at the mind, our mind, requires a steadiness that is developed through shamatha. When we are steady, and our mind's steady, and we're not there yet, we sort of have in possession our mind and we can look at it. We can ask questions. The question is, what color is your mind? And you look. So what color is your mind? I'm serious. What color is your mind? Pardon? You've never seen it. Nor have the Buddhas. So what shape is your mind? So those are, I don't mean to cause you obstacles, but the fact of the matter is that until we have developed a certain steadiness of mind, that becomes, it is difficult to answer those questions, or to even do that. But the mind is not a thing. And because it's not a thing, it can look at itself. That didn't solve anybody's problem, did it? It didn't solve anybody's problem. There is something else I wanted to do. Talk amongst yourselves while I look for my thing. I'm looking, there it is, right here. So this goes to what you were saying. If I can find it, it's on my phone. This will just take a second. It never works when you need it. There it did. So I'm going to read you a poem. And it goes directly to what you were saying. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart. And try to love the questions themselves. Love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Do not search for the answers, which could not be given to you now. because you would not be able to live with them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. That's a Rilke poem. So, I can't answer your question. Maybe we'll work towards it. Other questions or thoughts? Let's dedicate the merit. Dedicating the merit goes right along with this talk, because we can leave here saying, gee, I did a good job. I came out on St. Patrick's Day and I listened to a Dharma talk and I did a virtuous activity. Good me. What we do is, in the act of dedication, we say, whatever virtue I have, I give it away. I give it to all beings. May it result in their liberation. So this is dedication. So it's on the backside. And we'll say it in English. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. By it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the Bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path. I completely dedicate all this virtue. So you've just given it all away. It's not yours anymore. Thank you all, and happy St. Patty's.